We got Mike Fitz. Welcome, man.
Thank you, buddy. I'm glad to be here.
All right, so you're doing the part two of the Glam Slam Metal Tour with Enough's Enough and Choir Boys, two of my absolute favorite bands. I know admittedly, I'm a grunge and alternative guy, but hair metal and glam metal comes at a close second. So, how'd you get
Awesome.
involved in this tour?
Well, you know, my band Bad Marriage has played a few shows with Enough's Enough in the past,
Hmm.
and the most recent one was a few months ago in Boston. That's where Bad Marriage is from. And me and Chip from Enough's Enough just started talking, and I let him know we wanted to tour. We were looking to get back on the road. We've been doing some extensive touring supporting Tesla. Then we did a tour with Buck Cherry. So we wanted to get back out on the road, and he said he had mentioned that they were going on the road in the summer. So that's we kept in touch, and this tour came up for the month of July. So yeah, that's where we're at. We start
Nice.
tomorrow. Yeah, we start tomorrow.
That's awesome, man. And you have Tommy from Tesla on lead guitar. As I could tell, you're like very well connected with all these bands. And does it kind of surprise you when you take it all in, just how much of these connections you can make?
Yeah, I mean it's surprising. I mean, we put in a lot of work with the band. I mean, Bad Marriage has been a band for about 8 years. Like I said, we've been a road band. We've always liked to travel and get out there and meet fans and play, as many shows as we can in front of new crowds and stuff like that. So, yeah, we try to stay busy, so we don't really even have much time to even think about what's going on. We just try to keep moving forward. But yeah, I mean, yeah, if you asked me years ago if I thought Tommy, formerly of Tesla, would be in my band, I'd probably laugh and say no, no way. So yeah, it's definitely it's an honor, and we're glad to have him on board.
It's really cool, man. And I'd like for you to take it back a little bit to even before when you guys first started, when you were growing up, when Mike Fitz was growing up. What was your musical environment like, and how did those influences help inspire your musicianship?
Yeah. Well, I started playing guitar because a few of my friends were already playing, so I would get to go see them, and they had a little band in probably high school ish time, and I just the minute I heard we'd have like a basement party, and I would hear them jam on instruments, and I was just blown away. So just being around, loud drums and loud guitar amps and just loud rock and roll, that's when I was sold, and I'm like, I remember asking my grandmother for a guitar, and she bought me my first guitar, and I was probably like 15. So, I started a little bit later than normal. Than the normal age, I think. But I just picked up that guitar, and then I bugged the hell out of a bunch of my friends that I said, that were already playing to teach me stuff, and that's kind of how it started. Um, you know, there was a pretty cool rock and roll scene around. I'm from Massachusetts.
I mean,
Around
I
a
know
couple of
like Lemonheads and Dinosaur Jr. and all that.
well,
Juliana Hatfield.
in Massachusetts, we like to think of, like, for rock and roll that we do, obviously Aerosmith.
Yeah,
The Cars, I really like them.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
There's so many. I mean, Godsmack, it's a little bit more heavier, modern. The
yeah.
band Stained is from Massachusetts. There's so many of them. Dropkick
So many
Murphys.
different genres.
Yeah, yeah. So it was a pretty thriving scene when I was growing up. So once I got tapped into the circuit, it was always cool shows to go to, whether it was metal or rock or blues or anything. So it was, that's kind of in a nutshell. I grew up around it, and I've just been doing it ever since.
Nice. And then
Yeah.
2015, Bad Marriage Form. How did you guys get together, kind of branching off of that?
Yeah. So I was in a bunch of bands, obviously growing up and cutting my teeth in the music world. And you know, bands just break up for whatever reason. And you know, I had a band that had just recently broken up, and I said, you know what, I'm going to take everything I've learned as far as, you know, music business wise, music songwriting, everything I've learned over, you know, the years of me being in different bands. And I said, I'm going to try it again. I'm going to do one more big rock and roll band. And I said, you know, I'm going to hand pick all the guys because, you know, when you play around the scene for years, you meet people in other bands that you could see yourself being in a band with, you know.
Of course.
Yeah, so that's what I kind of did in 2015. I, you know, I had a bunch of music. I always have guitar riffs and stuff, but I had a bunch of music, and yeah, I just kind of went down the line and said, hey, I want this guy for a singer, I want this guy for a drummer, and just kind of happened like that, and it came together pretty quick. The last piece of the puzzle was our bass player Todd, which I didn't know him, you know, kind of my whole music career, but I met him and he quickly fit in. So basically, how it happened.
Yeah, and when I get to know your band and what you're about, it channels obviously a lot of that 80s hard rock heavy metal, but it kind of has also like a cynical edge to the themes and stuff. I like to think about like Warrior Soul, you know, like Corey Clark was kind of about that whole thing. And I really like, you know, Artificial Mind and Naysaying Blues. And how did that whole album come together? Was it part of that arsenal of riffs and songs that you've bunched together previously?
Yeah, definitely. Well, the Naysaying Blues one you're saying that was on our
Yeah.
um, first self title, but Artificial
Mhm.
Mind on our latest EP. Yeah, no, you know that riff I came up with recently. I'd been working with Brian Wheat of Tesla. We were kind of going over my old riffs that I had laying around, and we were messing with new stuff. And I had wrote that at his house, and he liked that intro riff that the song starts out with. So we built the song around that. So that was relatively new. But yeah, I guess it's a case by case scenario of which song, you know, where it came from. But for the most part, yeah, you know, Artificial Mind. Well, actually, I think it was a mix of old riffs and because when Brian came on to be producer and engineer and stuff, you know, we took a few of my old riffs, but for the most part, we carved a new path with like new stuff, new arrangement and stuff. So it was refreshing.
Yeah, and you have grown a lot between your album and your EP. And when you speak of production and who is involved, what can you say about your relationship thus far and how it has transformed up to this point?
Well, yeah, that's a great question because um, production wise, I was doing all of the production um, on everything we've done up until this EP. I handed the reins over to Brian um, for it, and you know it clearly shows. You know, whenever you change hands to for a different producer, you know they have a different sound. In our case, Brian has a very polished sound. Everything sounds really clean, mixed very well. And you know he's just a natural at that, and he works hard at that stuff. So I still think it sounds very much like Bad Marriage. I don't think it's drastically different, but it's just a little more polished, and we all you know very much dig it. So we're definitely happy with going in that direction for that EP.
You would definitely call it like just a natural step forward.
Yeah, definitely, I agree.
And this also has the inklings of Jeff Keith of Tesla like peppered throughout the EP. And even now, like, do you still kind of have that starstruck feeling when you're around these people you've grown up listening to?
Not anymore.
In the
You know,
beginning
it's
it was different.
oh yeah, because we had built a relationship with the Tesla guys and Jeff on the road because we started touring with them as an opening band, and they were very very kind to us right off the start. So the starstruck stuff kind of wears off because you become a team. There's a show night after night. You become a well-oiled machine because you're part of that show. So Bad Marriage was part of the lineup every night. So you become family. So then you start talking to them like you've known them forever. And Tesla was very good at making us feel like we were a part of their family. So by the time Jeff and Brian were in the studio with us, uh, it's like we were old friends. So it was really cool. It was like normal business as usual.
In the same way, it's like you go from kind of putting these guys on a pedestal. They're up here and you're down here, and you start out. But then naturally, you're saying like the illusion is gone, but the merit in his musicianship is not gone. I start to see him as an equal, as a human being. Now you're here. Now
Right.
you're at a level where you can actually see eye to eye and say, like, man, like the kindness, the sincerity, that's what shows through, and that's what kind of breaks the breaks the illusion in a good way.
Definitely. And it you know what it always did remind us though of the stardom thing and starstruck thing is when we would get done playing or hanging out with them on a day off, but then we would always watch Tesla. We would get to watch a band like Tesla or Buck Cherry or whoever we've opened with. And so when you're watching them, that's when you kind of, it hits you again because they're so good. It's like wow. So yeah, I guess it kind of works in like a roller coaster of one day you're like, oh yeah, these are just family, my buddies, and it's old hat hanging around, but then seeing them perform kind of is like, oh my god,
It
yeah,
reinvigorates that. It
yeah, yeah.
reinvigorates that, and it's really amazing when I see the lineup of these bands performing. It just goes to show, you know, not just in the terms of like nostalgia, but like how influential these guys were. I mean, like you could say like all like a lot of like glam hair metal stuff had to do with partying, excess, and all that. But Tesla had a very intelligent kind of. They were very thoughtful in their lyrics, and I think you channel that same thing too. You
Well,
don't
that's
just reintroduce like what we've heard all before. Like you actually have like very thoughtful lyrics.
well, I appreciate that. That's definitely a compliment, and that's something that we continue to strive to do. It's not an easy thing to do. We're trying to carve out our own signature sound as Bad Marriage. And again, it's just not an easy thing to do. So I appreciate when anyone says stuff like that, we don't sound like the normal run of the mill stuff, and because we do take a lot of care into crafting our songs, both musically and lyrically. So yeah, I love to agree with you on that one because obviously I think we were there before the relationship with Tesla a little bit, but I think they've enhanced it a lot because when you work with a band that's had so much success and you see them on stage night after night, you can't help but absorb their greatness and their experience, and they're like life lessons kind of thing.
Even now, it's like when I look at your name, when I look at the concept of what your band's about, the artwork and all of that, it's like when you look at your name at first, it's like, huh, Bad Marriage. But then instead of like dysfunctional kind of, it's like, for me, it's like bad, like not only in the cheesy 80s sense of bad, like that's bad, that's cool, but it's like the sense of adventure, the sense of like we want to get out and do this shit. We want to like ready ourselves for the adventure up ahead. And
Right.
taking in all of that, how would you say your relationships with each of the members has improved?
relationship with members of our band or
Yeah,
with
yeah.
it's I think it's always improving because the more time you spend, especially on the road, or in the studio when you're recording, everyone kind of gets each other and you learn how people work, and that's the whole key of keeping a band together, and it's very hard, and then that's actually how I named the band is because of past experiences, not with I've never been married before, not with a personal relationship, but trying to keep a band together, and how difficult it is to work with, four or five other people, that might not always agree or have different creative qualities. And so, yeah, it's super difficult being in an original band, trying to just stay on the same page, have everyone having like the same hungriness to advance, to keep getting better on, off the stage, and just keeping the same goals as a band. So we've done it up till now. So that's why we're keeping going with it.
Were there any like discrepancies in your previous bands? I mean, I'm sure there are many, but like, was there any patterns that were very stark that you see kind of
Um,
easing away with this band?
it's being different bands is always different reasoning. So, like, uh, bands break up with who knows all the different reasons. Some people can't travel on the road because of family obligations or job, obligations, financial, and then there's just creative differences. So yeah, I mean, you take all that stuff, and I think that's all that stuff, me going through those similar situations in previous bands. I think that's how I handpicked, what helped me handpick the members of Bad Marriage, because I had already vetted most of them throughout the years, just playing with them on different stages and different bands, knowing, who's up to bat and who can handle the life of being in a band, and yeah, that's kind of how I went about it.
Considering what you've been through in your career with the bands you've been with, and now with this band, the Bad Marriage, um,
Mm-hmm.
what have you learned about yourself, not only as a musician but as a person?
Well, it's the same thing I think you'd learn with any job or growing startup business, because that's ultimately what it is. It's a team building environment, and just team building qualities. Again, you learn how to deal with other people, and how they deal with you, and constantly trying to get better at that, and just to overall get along with your business, your team members, and continue to be creative and grow, and keep striving to reach higher goals.
Lastly, anything you'd like to say to your fans?
Well, I mean, we absolutely love and adore our fans that we already have. We're constantly, trying to find new ones to add to the family, the Bad Marriage rock and roll family. So, as long as the fans like what we do, we're going to continue on. That's our fuel. So, to any new fans, we'd love to meet you. Whether it's on social media or out at a show, we're very active, on staying in touch, and building relationships with fans who dig what we do. Because obviously, I know it sounds cliche, but without them, there's no Bad Marriage, because that's the fuel that keeps us going.